situation, my initial thought was no. Mike is deadly dangerous. If he hits you, he can take your head off. But then as I thought about it more, that's the great Mike Tyson. How could you not? Who don't want to share the ring with Mike Tyson?
How is Roy Jones?
Yeah, he's real formidable. I realize this is very complicated. He can't catch that. He's scared to catch that. You have no idea what you have in store from the God of War. You get in my face, I gotta hit you. Gotta knock a motherfucker out. Gotta hurt somebody.
It's like David and Goliath. He's the giant, and I'm the little David who only has God on my side, which is only all I need.
There's never any doubt in my mind because I'm the best in the world, even though a lot of you don't like to hear it. It's fact.
Boxing is a brutal sport. This is what I do.
When you become a fighter, that's because you can't do nothing else. No doubt he's the best in his generation, I'm the best in my generation.
If you're not a legend, you don't belong here.
We are just moments away here at the Staples Center again. A year that by any definition has not been normal. Well, tonight is definitely not a normal combat sports event, and Israel Adesanya, the undefeated UFC middleweight champion, I was in my early 20s when these two were in their primes, and seeing what they were able to accomplish. Obviously, it's an exhibition. Obviously, they are both over 50. Temper the expectations. They say if you don't expect nothing, you won't be disappointed. This is about curiosity. This is about nostalgia. This is about professional pride.
Yeah, 100%. This is, like you said, nostalgia. Mike is one of those guys, like in his era. Same with Roy. In his era, if you were alive, if you were there witnessing it happen, you can't even describe it. It's something that was just beautiful. It was hard to, like, I was a kid, you know, and I'm a guy who still to this day, whenever, example, you at the PI, the UFC PI, if you see Mike rocking around, everyone stops and looks.
Oh, he transcended the sport.
More than the sport. He's Mike Tyson. Same with Roy Jones. Like Roy, when he was in his, he's the guy that would play a basketball game like hours before his fight.
Eric Lucas, the only athlete to ever participate in two paid sports events in one day. Now, Ray, you came back a few times, albeit with mixed results, right?
Yes.
Now, here we are. Mike Tyson, 15 years removed from his ignominious defeat against Kevin McBride. Roy Jones has been active, but hasn't been active for over 3 years, or close to 3 years. Why do fighters keep coming? But why do you come back? Is it all about the Benjamins, Ray?
For me, it's really hard to articulate unless you're in my shoes.
Well, put yourselves in Mike and Roy's shoes and compare yourself.
Well, for me, thank God, I didn't come back for financial reasons. I came back because I wanted to fight Marvin Hagler. Unfortunately, fight Terry Norris, Hector Macho Camacho. I mean, I pushed the envelope too much without being ready here and here.
But you were in your 30s, and these guys are now in their 50s. And while it is an exhibition, do you feel that it's going to remain so? I mean, we're talking Mike Tyson, Roy Jones Jr., two guys with healthy egos, a lot of pride.
You said exhibition?
I did?
No, there's no such thing as an exhibition. Even when I'm sparring with my brother Roger, I don't spar.
Well, what is your definition of hard sparring? That's what the California State Athletic Commission has decreed this match. They want them to go at it, but not necessarily hurt each other. Come on.
They have no control over that. They are going to hurt each other. Hate to say it.
Israel, what do you? I mean, you've been very vocal about the same thing. There's a big difference in terms of a lot of people, casual sports fans, lapsed boxing fans, with everything going on in the world, need a break from, I guess, reality. This is surreality. What about this fight tonight? What do you expect?
Honestly, I expect them to go at each other. Like I said, this is Thriller. This ain't vanilla. I don't know what this exhibition thing we're talking about is. But once someone gets touched, egos, like Mike said, the gods of war have summoned him again. They've summoned him again. That's why, like Mr. Leonard said, in here, he's had that. Same with Roy. They have that. They're fighters through and through. It's like riding a bike. Once you're a fighter, you can't let go of that. You have to be able to, though.
All right, let's take a look at the illustrious numbers for both Mike Tyson, Roy Jones Jr. And again, we've talked about the age. We've talked about the fact that they have been, well, throughout their careers, involved in so many highs and some lows as well. And what sticks out for you, Israel, when you look at the numbers, that winning streak definitely is impressive.
For me, it's just a record. Like, for me, I just see knowledge passed down. Just, this is crazy. These guys have been around. They're old dogs, and they still got some new tricks up their sleeve.
And their knockout streaks lengthy, 19 for Tyson, 17 for Roy Jones. And yeah, y'all must have forgot. I mean, Roy Jones Jr., obviously a man known for his boxing, his creative offense, much like you, Israel. But he also possessed some pop, the uppercuts, the Glenn Kelly. I mean, that was a posterizing of a fighter when he had his hands down, pop Glenn Kelly. So let's see, Ray, again, final words in terms of what is the realistic expectations tonight?
You know, when the fight was first announced, I said Mike Tyson, but I didn't include Roy Jones Jr. Anything can happen here. I can't call it.
What would be a success for you?
For me, if they both show their true heart and even go more than 4 rounds and show true skill, that would be a big win for everyone.
And I think it's an advantage for both, but for Mike Tyson especially, 2-minute rounds. They were supposed to wear headgear, and, well, if you go back to the rematch with Evander Holyfield, maybe Roy Jones Jr. wishes they were wearing headgear tonight, but it's they're not going to be wearing headgear. 8 2-minute rounds.
Maybe you and I can do that.
Maybe you can do that, and I'll call it.
My man's about that action.
All right, so here we go. We are just moments away. Legends Only League, the first night, and here's Mike Tyson's resume, and yeah, it speaks for itself. Started his career with 19 consecutive knockouts, a ferocious blast, a fire hose blast of brutality. Became the youngest heavyweight champion in history when he defeated Trevor Berbick, was the 86 and 1988 Fighter of the Year. His prime really between 86 and 91. He was the undisputed heavyweight champion for 3 years. Look at that, half of his 44 knockouts come in the opening round, and, well, a night that he would, I'm sure, like to forget, quitting on the stool against Kevin McBride, saying that he had lost his love for boxing, but boxing has saved his life, and he is back, wanting to get back to humanity, wanting to get back to his family, wanting to get back to himself. And, of course, a lot of money for charity as well. Let's go now to Roy Jones Jr.'s. All right, and before we get that, let's talk a little bit more about this resume, Israel. Again, the power.
That's the thing everyone always says. Even in my career, they keep saying the power. But power means shit if you can't get it to the target. But the guy, Mike Tyson, knows how to deliver that power to the target. He's got beautiful head movement. He knows how to get inside, great footwork, and deliver that power. And he's done it over and over again. Look at that, 22 or 44 KOs inside the first round. I won't be surprised if we see that here tonight.
Ray, you were an undisputed welterweight champion. Mike Tyson, an undisputed heavyweight champion. I mean, undisputed speaks for itself, my man. What is it like being at the top of the mountain?
Indescribable. Indescribable, but it's all about the purpose. Reason.
And we saw Tyson climb the mountain, but he ended up finding a cliff, a precipitous fall. But hey, he's going to try to be as sharp as he can. If he's as sharp as a cliff edge, he might do well tonight as we again anticipate the main event here. And we've got, of course, Roy Jones Jr. We would love to take a look at his resume as well, as, of course, he was the fighter of the 90s. And a guy that just, I mean, this guy moved his hands like a magician, becoming the first fighter to start a career at 154 and then claim a piece of the heavyweight crown, the first middleweight champion to do so in 100 years. And again, Olympic silver medalist. Ray, you were a gold medalist. Roy Jones Jr. should have been a gold medalist. The worst decision in Olympic boxing history.
I actually cried when that happened. That was just so wrong.
All right, and Snoop Dogg rejoins us, and Snoop, Roy Jones Jr. spits a few bars as well. He's a man after your own heart with the rapping, but what about the rapping he'll be doing in the ring tonight?
I mean, you got to look at his career. Roy was the man in the 90s, just like, you know, the music that I made was real effective in the 90s, so we kind of like coexisted at the same time. So to see that he still got the spirit and the will and the know-how, and to put his skills up against the great Mike Tyson, that says a lot, because Mike is Mike no matter what day it is or what night it is. So I'm anxious to see what's going to happen.
All right, bringing the OG Funk along with Roy Jones Jr., Snoop Dogg in Israel. What about Roy Jones Jr.? We've talked about throughout the night the way that you have patterned some of your unorthodox creative offense. What is it? What bedazzled you the most about Roy Jones Jr. in his heyday?
For me, it's his confidence. He was so sure of himself. Mike had that as well, and Mike talked about that when he walked in the ring. But Roy had this confidence, this aura of invincibility. Like he just knew you can't rock with me. Like I'm gonna go in there and impose my will on you, and like hands behind the back with James Toney. What's up? And then he copied him, dropped him down. These are iconic moments in combat sports history and highlights that are gonna live on and on and on forever. He might create another one tonight.
All right, well, we have a contact high in the building thanks to Snoop. And Snoop, there hopes to be a lot of contact tonight.
Thanks to Weedmaps, man. I followed the navigation on Weedmaps, man.
And speaking of cannabis, of course, Mike Tyson has had a legendary career. Snoop, talk about the influence of Iron Mike and why you're such a fan.
Man, Iron Mike Tyson is the epitome of what it means to be great, to come from nothing and become something. He was our hero. You know, we looked up to Sugar Ray, Muhammad Ali, and then it was Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson was the new era of what they had laid down, you know, running with the baton, taking it to another level. So he represented the hood, he represented the turf that you could actually get up out of the hood and make it. So we really, you know, leaned on him and loved him for what he did, and we supported him through his good times, bad times, and his comeback. So we always been there for Mike Tyson.
What did you think when this fight was first announced, Snoop? Did you think that the Indo was a little stronger than usual?
I was like, let me call Roy to make sure. You hear me? Are y'all sure? You show.
And there, speaking of the devil himself, there's Roy Jones Jr. Again, just an incredible athlete. And Ray Leonard, of course, with some of the fastest hands in the sport. Roy Jones Jr. with dazzling hand speed, but it was just the creative offense, the unorthodox nature. And it's just incredible to see him making this walk now at the age of 51. He said it was a bucket list. He knows he's giving up the size, and he says, you know, you can criticize him all you want, you can make light of the fight, but he says, I'm going to be standing across Mike Tyson. This is bucket list stuff, Israel.
100%. This is something that dreams are made of. This is a fantasy fight, if you will. But it's not a fantasy. It's about to happen right now in front of us. And yeah, Roy, never count out an old dog. He's still got this tricks up his sleeve. And he's a guy that's a crafty veteran. I'm telling you, man, they say speed's elastic is one of the first things that go when you get older. But he's a guy that still retained a little bit of that. He's not the same, his eyes aren't the same like you said, but he's still got that pop in his punches and that delivery system that's super fast.
2020 continues to bring the improbable. Let's go to Michael Buffer.